What's up everyone? Today's video is going to be another Tom Clancy's The Division build video centering on the Nomad 6-piece classified set. However, since this is kind of been done to death, it's something that a lot of people have already covered, I will be including a lot of extra information in this build guide. Some stuff about PvE, some more stuff about PvP, and specifically how to counter this build as well as how to construct it. The Nomad bonuses right now are some of the strongest in the game. For the 2-piece, you have health on kill. The 3-piece grants a constant small amount of healing, allowing the user to regenerate all segments of the health bar during combat. The 4-piece, when receiving fatal damage, you are instead healed to full health and can occur once every 4 minutes. The 5-piece, additional health on kill and increases the amount of healing from Nomad's Resolve, which is the 3-piece up here. As well as Nomad's Resolve will now overheal all the way up to a full overheal bar. And then the 6-piece, the one that's really strong, 50% chance to have no cooldown for Path of the Nomad, which is the 4-piece bonus, which gives you full health. Takes 60% less damage for 10 seconds after Path of the Nomad is triggered. So basically there's a lot of RNG involved in this set, but you can get 3 or 4 or sometimes even 5 consecutive full health lives in PvP. It's extremely strong and a lot of people have built it, but I'll be covering how to defeat it later on in the video. The stat composition is really flexible on this. Unlike some other builds, you don't necessarily need 9,000 stamina or 9,000 firearms. You can really allocate stats the way that you choose to in terms of firearms, stamina, and electronics. So what I've opted for is about 7,500 firearms, about 4,300 stamina, and 3,900 electronics. Just have enough. The basic rule of thumb is have enough to unlock your gun talents. Moving on to individual gear pieces, we'll begin with the backpack, which is fairly straightforward. I have health, ammo capacity, and firearms. It's really simple. There's nothing better for major attributes here. For minor attributes, you could opt for something like bleed or disrupt resistance, and it did recently come to light that bleed resistance does impact the Predator's Mark bleed. It does not decrease the amount of damage that you take, but it will decrease the number of bleed ticks that Predator's Mark will have over its full duration. So you can opt for bleed resistance. It will help you in PvP. Next, we have our gloves, and I have opted for the holy trinity of major attributes here, in my opinion, if you have any electronics at all. I have skill haste, assault rifle damage, and critical hit chance. You can switch out skill haste for critical hit damage if you are going more towards the damage side of the spectrum, but I believe that skill haste is more valuable here because we do have one piece of electronics gear, and we do have skill power that's up above 100,000. Next is the holster, another really straightforward piece of gear in the build. You want critical hit chance because this doesn't roll enough health to be worth it. High main stat rolls across the board and then 4% critical hit chance. Next up is our knee pads, and I have chosen to run with health as a major attribute. I believe that that's the best choice. And then for minor attributes, damage to elites, bleed resistance, and shock resistance. The more I learn about the current state of the division, the amount of people running shock turrets, the amount of people running Predator's Mark, the more I am realizing that bleed and shock resistance are necessary on the knee pads. So damage to elites, because a lot of the environments are hybrid and have NPCs in them, and you will be dealing damage to NPCs, is great, as well as bleed and shock resistance, and health as a major attribute is unparalleled. It is very strong. Now we have the mask, and this varies a little bit based on which activity you're going to be playing. If you are playing PvP, then critical hit chance. If you are playing PvE and fighting NPCs, then enemy armor damage is the proper choice. For a minor attribute, damage to elites is probably the best option. Last up for gear, we have our Nomad's chest piece, and on the chest piece I've opted for health, skill haste, and ammo capacity. You don't necessarily need ammo capacity on both the chest piece and the backpack, but having it on at least one is really good. And then health, this is roughly equivalent, due to the stamina scaling, to about 500 main stat of stamina. So health is a major attribute on the chest piece, absolutely necessary. And then I have skill haste. You can switch this out for EDR if you want more survivability, but again, because you do have a little bit of an increased amount of skill power because of one electronics piece, skill haste will serve you quite well. For gear mods, I am running 4 different electronics mods with critical hit chance to both boost damage and unlock my gun talent, which requires 3,800 to be active, and then I have 1 stamina mod with critical hit chance. And for all my performance mods, again, due to the amount of skill power that we have and the drastic increase to skill haste that we have on the build, we have first aid self-heal in all 4 at 6% each. Moving over to the weapon, we have what I believe to be the perfect trifecta role of weapon talents, which is responsive, competent, and unforgiving. However, the order of these talents does matter a great deal. If competent is in the 3rd slot, then you can spec everything into firearms and stamina instead of electronics. However, in my situation, since competent is not, then I do have 1 piece of electronics gear. Like I said previously, just use all of your different mods and gear pieces and their main stat to unlock all gun talents. Moving on to skills, I'll try to keep it quite brief. I do always recommend booster shot in most situations, and running double heal. Then again, I am a console player. Sometimes on PC the meta will differ, but for me I find that this works best. Booster shot does give you increased damage and damage mitigation, and because of our first aid self-heal performance mods, it will heal for a significant margin. After that, I then opt to run the support station with Immunizer because it doubles as a cleanse of status effects, thus removing the Predator's Mark bleed in situations where you need that, and a decent 33% of your health bar heal, regardless of how much stamina you have. And it also is on a much shorter cooldown than the first aid skill. As you can see here, 28 seconds versus 40 seconds. For talents, I recommend On the Move, Precision, Critical Save in any build, and then Strike Back, because Nomad, you will be taking lethal damage, which then puts you back at full health. Thus, you will always get value out of Strike Back when you're face trading with enemies. And the other thing, Precision, a lot of people don't know this, is carried over from a previous version of the game. You are actually getting 12.5% increased critical hit chance, which is far higher than what I would get if I were using a base pulse from the pulse skill. Precision is extremely strong, though it does require you to land a headshot. Moving over to some PvP, I'll keep the gameplay brief because I'm pretty sure everyone out there already knows that the 6-piece is very strong, that you can survive a great deal of damage, and that it's a really powerful build. There's no need for me to demonstrate that or go on solo manhunts or anything of the sort. I will, however, demonstrate that even with one single proc of the Nomad bonus, it's enough to survive an obscene amount of damage. You can even let yourself take damage at certain points, even if you don't get the second consecutive proc, because you get so much mitigation. You can deal a lot of damage because you're spec'd, primarily into firearms, and you do have a lot of crit, and you do have the right weapon talents, which are all active. So just, it's a really well-rounded PvP build. Everyone already knows this. That's not really the interesting part. That's kind of just a no-brainer. Switching gears and talking about PvE, there are a couple of key changes. Number one, I have one additional piece of stamina gear to unlock all of my weapon talents, and I have changed the weapon that I'm using and the talents that are on it. Number two, I have switched a couple of roles to have as much enemy armor damage as I can possibly get on the pieces that were that flexible. Number three, if you want to, I have not done it here, but it will just increase the efficiency of the PvE version of the build. You can switch out all of your different gear mods for purple damage to elite mods, which are on sale sometimes from the vendors. It may seem counterproductive because they are purple and have less stat points, but it's the best thing for player versus environment and fighting NPCs. Moving over to my weapon, you can see that I'm now running with Predatory, Commanding, and Determined. The reason I have Predatory is because we will be standing directly in front of NPCs and tanking all the damage due to the bonus from Nomad, which brings you back to full health, as well as the bonus which heals constantly, and Predatory at 35% health over 20 seconds. This is going to be very strong. The second talent, Commanding, will increase the duration of your signature, which is a core element of the PvE version of this build. And Determined, what some people don't know, does interact with the signature. So getting a kill with Determined will decrease the cooldown on your tack link, which is what you'll be using for farming PvE elements of the game, by 7.5 seconds. To demonstrate the PvE version, I decided to jump into a Lexington and use it on the NPCs that are present there, because they are all elite NPCs. It's something that is, commonly farmed by a lot of players. And it was a really good example to use. If you pop your Tactical Link signature, you are then able to stand directly in front of targets and face tank, thus getting the kills, getting the health on kill, proccing Predatory, and proccing Commanding to increase the duration of your Tactical Link signature and keep it active as long as there is a flow of NPCs. You won't necessarily have it up every single time you pop it by the next time that you move on to another group of NPCs, but you will, however, regenerate it very quickly. You have huge survivability. You get over 25% health on kill, depending on how you spec. And then, again, you'll recharge your Tactical Link signature with Determined, so you can pop it very frequently, and as long as there's NPCs, keep it active. There's a lot of other things that you could do to boost the efficiency. You can change out your performance mods for pulse critical hit chance and then run a pulse because you don't really need the healing from the support station. In PvE, there's a lot of different ways to mix it up. This is just a base concept for you guys to build off of in order to maximize the efficiency, and I wanted to show both sides of the coin and not just do a PvP version. Last up, I wanted to talk about some ways to counter this build in PvP. A lot of people may even come to this video instead of trying to build Nomad, understand how to defeat it, and that is completely viable. There is a 50% chance on the Nomad 6-piece, as we've already talked about in the beginning, to have no cooldown on Path of the Nomad, which would then bring you back to full health yet again after you've already been reduced and taken fatal damage. You take 60% less damage for 10 seconds after Path of the Nomad is triggered. This build is completely centered around face tanking and then taking lethal damage. Face tanking to the point where your character would have died, then going back to full health, and then taking down the enemy. As you can see on my weapon, we have Unforgiving active, and you will be getting full value out of this. Enemy Nomad players will be getting full value out of this, and when they do take lethal damage, as you can see, you go up to over 1,000,000 toughness. The only strategy that is viable against a Nomad player that is skilled and knows what he's doing, or she's doing, is to break line of sight. As soon as you proc their bonus, as soon as they have been taken down to 0 health and then gone back up to full, you need to break line of sight. Use harmful status effects, light them on fire, bleed them, anything of the sort, shock them, any of these things to hinder their movement, and stay away from them and do not face trade. The number one mistake that I see happen is a lot of players, even when I was running this build, they will stand and they will trade with me. They will get me down to 0 health, I will go back to up to full, and they will continue to face trade with me while I get even more value out of Unforgiving, and they honestly have no shot of killing me. So the number one thing and how to defeat Nomad players, utilize status effects, take them all the way down, proc their Nomad bonus, and then get away from them. Turn around corners, drop grenades, and otherwise avoid them for 10 consecutive seconds until that bonus is faded, and then you can feel free to trade it again. I hope this video was helpful, guys. Thank you for watching. Check out the links down below if you want to support the channel. I would encourage anyone out there that wants to support to check out Patreon, as YouTube is fairly unreliable these days in terms of making a viable living, as well as having enough money to further the projects of Upper Echelon, continue the video production, work on the website, etc. Speaking of the website, check that out as well. Great forums there and some really awesome initiatives with Noble Streamer and a charity event style artwork commission operation that's going to be hosted there very soon. So thank you guys for watching yet again, and as always, have a nice night.